Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today I'm talking about Pokémon Violet. This is not my first time playing through the game. I did play through it when it first came out, and it was around a time that I wasn't recording any casual review. What prompted me to start over a new game is I was looking over my Pokemon Go library and I saw a lot of duplicate shiny Pokemon that I wanted something to do with. Just Pokemon that I collected during community days and duplicates from hatching eggs and things like that. So I actually transferred them over to Pokemon Home, and I transferred a couple of eligible shiny Pokemon over to Pokemon Violet, and I started the game with 3 shiny Pokemon. I actually had a full team of shiny Pokemon, but apparently some of them aren't available in Pokemon Violet, which is unfortunate. I do really like the idea of Pokemon Home as a whole concept. I definitely do not like the idea of it being a paid subscription, so normally what I do is whenever I have a hankering to play a Pokemon game is I'll just buy a month's worth of Pokemon Home, which is I think $3, and that actually saves me more money because I only play maybe 2 or 3 Pokemon games a year. So it's about $9 a year, depending on like how many months I subscribe to it. But I like the idea of Pokemon Home because whenever I do play through a Pokemon game, I feel like I haven't wasted any time and everything is going into my big horde of Pokemon that I sit on top of like a dragon. Even games that I play on the Nintendo 3DS, like the Pokemon Crystal Virtual Console, I can transfer them up to Pokemon Home and then play them on Switch games, which I think is really cool. I actually had a Girafarig that I had in Pokemon Silver, I think, on the Virtual Console, and I played through it my whole run, so it was like level 50 or 60, somewhere in between there. And what was really cool is I was able to transfer Girafarig all the way up to Pokemon Violet, that same Pokemon, and then evolve it and have it be a part of my team in the late game. So I think it's cool that like no Pokemon that I grow attached to is lost in any way, and I think I'm going to passively start to collect a living dex on my Pokemon Home. For those of you who don't know, a living dex is like a complete collection of all of the Pokemon in your home. So it's not just a Pokedex where if you have like a Bulbasaur and you evolve it up to an Ivysaur then a Venusaur, then all 3 of those are checked off. You need an individual Bulbasaur and an Ivysaur and a Venusaur, so you need like 3 of those Pokemon rather than just 1. And so that's what a living dex is, and I think just passively, I'm not going to like actively strive for it, but just playing Pokemon Go and my occasional Pokemon game runs, I'm just going to like bulk transfer all of the Pokemon that I've collected over the time back into my Pokemon Home, and then whenever I do start a new game, then I'm going to transfer all of the eligible Pokemon from Pokemon Home to the new game, which is exactly what I did in this playthrough. So like right when I started the game, I already had like 300 something slots filled on my Pokedex, which was really cool. And I just have a fun time just kind of like organizing my Pokemon in Pokemon Home, just in order of their like Pokedex entries. And it's just fun like looking through all the shinies that I've collected. And I have a folder that just says old friends on it, and it's like all of the previous Pokemon that I've played in previous runs, and it's fun to like kind of transfer them in between games. But this is starting to sound like a Pokemon Home casual review, and we are here to talk about Pokemon Violet. So I started the game with a couple of shinies that I've gotten in during community days. In terms of the 3 starters that I actually chose Sprigatito this time, because the first time I played this game, I went with Fuecoco. I still think that Fuecoco is the best starter out of the 3 in this game. My least favorite is definitely Quaxly, because I really do not like his final evolution, but maybe my 3rd eventual Pokemon Violet playthrough I will play as Quaxly. I like Sprigatito just fine, and I think the grass dark typing is actually pretty cool, but I definitely think that Fuecoco has the coolest final evolution out of the 3. Alongside Sprigatito, I also transferred a shiny Axew and a shiny Froakie and a shiny Fennekin, and those all evolved, and they'll stick with me the whole time. And somewhere along the way, I did pick up a Wooper, which in this game, there's a Paldean Wooper who evolves into a Clogsire instead of a Quagsire, and its typing is ground poison. I actually really liked this Pokemon, the idea of it, the first playthrough, and it didn't end up sticking with my team, but this time I did end up having a Clogsire with me the entire time. Now, I did also pick up a Houndstooth, or whatever the ghost dog is, and he just wasn't cutting it for my team, so I ended up kicking him out of the party and bringing my Girafarig from my Pokemon Silver playthrough here, and my Girafarig evolved into Farigiraf. That's still a hard word to say, Farigiraf. But it's just cool that I was able to like bring my old party member from Pokemon Silver to here, and now he can be a part of my party in this playthrough. So that was the main party that I did end up using. But as I went along, whenever I did not have a Pokemon in my current Pokedex, I definitely made sure to capture them. For one, for my living dex that I'm passively trying to build, but also I think it's really satisfying whenever you complete a Pokedex entry in this game, because it does this cool little animation where it's almost like a cover for a VHS tape. I know I'm dating myself there, but like a cover for a VHS tape, and then you like put it along the shelf in order for like the Pokedex. So if you caught a Bulbasaur, I don't think Bulbasaur is allowed in this game, but if you caught a Bulbasaur, you'd get like a Bulbasaur VHS case, and then you'd put that case up on the shelf next to the Ivysaur, and it does this cool little spinning animation. Not to mention, it incentivizes you to collect as many Pokemon as possible, because every 10 that you complete on the Pokedex, you get a couple of items, which is really nice. The gimmick in this game is terastallizing, so it's not my favorite gimmick as far as Pokemon mechanics go. I think my favorite is probably the Mega Evolution that was introduced in previous games, but this one brings in an interesting twist because it can benefit any Pokemon, and basically the idea of terastallizing is you can add a third typing or a second typing to a Pokemon. So let's say you have your Charizard, which is fire and flying type. You can potentially terastallize a Charizard, so now it is fire, flying, and psychic type. And so this brings a couple of new mechanics and twists to the combat system. Now by default, if you were to just catch like a random Pokemon out in the field, they are going to already have a terastallizing type of a typing that they already have. For instance, my Sprigatito started out as grass type, so his terastallizing type is also grass type. This means that it is double typing of grass and grass. So whenever you use a grass move, it does even more damage than it normally would, but you are also susceptible to its weaknesses, such as fire, even more than grass already would be. So it brings in some interesting mechanics, and I think it's fun. My main gripe about the terastallizing mechanic is it adds this really dumb looking hat to the Pokemon that you terastallize. So if you were terastallizing your Charmander as a water type, then it suddenly gets this weird like water spout hat that is almost like the size of the Pokemon itself. And I get that this is a clear visual way to see what type the Pokemon has terastallized as, but I still think it looks dumb. And like I feel like they could have done something cooler, like the Mega Evolution visually, like make them visually cooler, or maybe like add just like a circle underneath where they're standing on, and its color corresponds to its typing. So if it's ice, then it's like a light blue, or I don't know, something maybe a little more subtle than a hat that's the same size as the Pokemon. This game has a really slow start, and maybe it's because I had already played through this game previously this year, and so I already knew everything that was happening, and during cutscenes and talking, I would just mash that A button because I just didn't care, and I had already known the story. But like, it takes a while to just get me going, let me be in the field, let me explore, because the really cool thing about this game is this is the first true open world game. Now, Pokemon Legends Arceus had zones that were open world, but this takes it to another level where it's like, hey, here's this giant 3D open world, and technically you can go explore wherever you want, catch whatever you want. Now, I say technically because there are some caveats to that. It's probably in your best interest to go the intended pathway, but if you wanted to give yourself an additional challenge and just go to a really high level zone or face off against a high level gym leader, then you could totally do that if you wanted. You're just gonna make other areas of the world easier because you'll already be like way too leveled up to go to there. But it's not like Pokemon was ever like a super difficult game. The main objective in this game is you are a student at a school, and I didn't really spend any time in the school. I guess like the idea is potentially you can go to these classes and a teacher will tell you about a certain mechanic that is in the game. Besides the introduction to this game that forces you to go to the school, I never never went back there. It's like I don't want to get reminded of my job, so I'm not gonna go back to the school when I could go out and explore the world. So, but basically the school assigns this big project to all the kids to go find their treasure, and so you meet 3 students in this school, and they each have their own kind of treasure, which you are just kind of tagging along. So you have one where you are basically defeating these giant Titan Pokemon, and you're obtaining these herbs, and your fellow classmate uses these herbs to make like a sandwich, and you use these sandwiches to basically increase your traversal abilities. And your main way of traversing around this open world is you are riding basically the legendary Pokemon on the cover of the game. So if you're playing Pokemon Violet, then you get Miraidon, and it's like this futuristic looking motorcycle. And I don't have Scarlet, so I don't know the name of the Scarlet legendary Pokemon, but that one kind of like runs around, and it's more like a prehistoric Pokemon, like a prehistoric version of a motorcycle. And so I went with Violet. Every time you get one of these herbs that your classmate makes into a sandwich, you give it to Miraidon, and then Miraidon gets a new ability to let you get to different areas. For instance, one makes him jump higher, one makes it so he can glide, one makes it so he can traverse across water. And so this was probably the best story-wise and mechanic-wise treasure in the game, one of these 3 alternative paths that you can go, because I felt like I actually obtained something whenever I did these, and I felt a real attachment to the story, especially in terms of like this classmate that you're helping out, because I think his story is the most interesting, but I don't want to spoil it here. So that's probably my favorite of the 3 pathways. The second pathway that you can do is the traditional Pokemon gym leader kind of thing. You're going to defeat the 8 gym leaders, and you are going to take on the Elite Four and then become a champion. And at the very beginning of the game, you get introduced to your quote-unquote rival, because every Pokemon game has like a rival that you occasionally battle throughout the story. But I really like this rival in this game. Her name's Nimona, and basically she's playing the game on New Game Plus, because by the time you meet her, she's already a champion, she's already like a pro trainer, but she is starting over to play alongside with you. So when you first do your entry-level battle, she picks up a starter Pokemon just like you do, and she's basically starting over. So she doesn't use her main champion team until like the end of the game when you fight her. So I like the idea that she's starting over so that she can play the game over with you, which is really fun. The third story is probably my least favorite, and it revolves around this group of bullies called Team Star or Starlight or something like that. And they're basically like the Team Rocket of this game. And they're basically just like a bunch of bullies around the school that are recruiting more classmates to become bullies. The only really funny thing about this one is the dean, basically, of this school. He dresses up like a student to kind of tag along with you, but it's like his hidden identity. And whenever you call him out and say like, hey, dean or principal or whatever his title was, he's like, don't call me that. My name is Clive. I'm your classmate, because he's kind of going undercover to figure out this bully situation as well. This pathway is interesting too, because you get to utilize the auto battle system a little more. It's not very strategic, but it is kind of breaking up the pace in terms of this game allows you to throw out your Pokemon and just say, hey, go auto battle, go battle and fight whatever you see out there. And you're not telling the Pokemon the moves or anything like that. You're just sending it out, and if it's got enough health and if it has the type advantage and the levels, then it will defeat that enemy Pokemon, and if not, then he'll hide back in his ball. And so there's a moment in this pathway of the bullies particularly where you can send up to like 3 different Pokemon, and you're just basically trying to defeat 30 of these Pokemon within the certain time frame. And then you fight the big boss of that area. And what you get for this one is basically just like a bunch of TMs and items to craft TMs. You don't really get too much else other than that, so the rewards aren't great, but I think it is cool that they did introduce craftable TMs rather than having to go buy them or get them from other NPCs. Once you've done all 3 of these pathways, I'm not going to get too spoilery here, but there is some really cool endgame content before you roll the credits. and it's a cool area and it looks cool, and basically like the 3 classmates that you helped out throughout this game are finally all tag teaming together and talking to each other as you explore this new area. So definitely something to look forward to. Probably some of the coolest end game stuff in a Pokemon game that I've ever played. This game did take away some quality of life features that other games did have in terms of Pokemon. One of the biggest ones that I miss from other Pokemon games is the ability to play with one hand. And I know that sounds kind of lazy, but like you could map the A button to the right trigger and the B button to the front right trigger, and control the movement with your analog stick. And I get that that's not really possible in some scenarios for this game because you have to manipulate the camera with the right stick. But at least during like battles or something, I wish that you could do it all with just one hand. They took away the ability to take off battle animations, which I usually do just because these Pokemon games can start feeling a little slow. And I feel like the text speed in this game particularly is slow. Even when you change it in the settings to fast, it still feels slow. And in terms of like the battle animations, you just have to sit through the same animation over and over again, especially if you're using the same Pokemon and they have like a really strong move. Obviously, you're going to use that same move over and over again. So I wish it gave me the ability to just turn off the animation, but still do the attack. Now, it's weird because this game did have a setting to turn off any of the like videos and cutscenes, and I'm like, oh yeah, during my second playthrough, I don't need to see those. So I clicked on it, but it still showed me, I don't know like how many it did end up not showing me, but I felt like I saw most of the cutscenes and videos that I would if I had left that setting unchecked, which is weird. If someone could tell me more what that setting does, I'd appreciate it. There are some cool features like the auto battling that I mentioned, and then you can just like auto heal your Pokemon with like whatever healing items you have. So if your Pokemon, when you're battling a wild Pokemon and your Pokemon's like at a 4th health, you can just target it and say, just, hey, heal up, use whatever healing items you need to do and heal up, which is really quick. There's not a lot to do in the cities, which is surprising. Like you can't go indoors aside from the school, I believe. And most of the cities just have a bunch of like NPCs that you can't even really talk to. Spare for a couple of exceptions, but other than that, it's just like there's not much to do in the city other than go to the gym leader and fight the gym. It seems like in previous games you could go into all the buildings and like at least a good half of the NPCs had like a TM to give you, or a Pokemon to trade, or like an interesting tidbit, or like an item to give you that makes a Pokemon evolve, or they all have different mechanics. But in this game there wasn't much, maybe like 1 or 2 in each city, which made the cities feel kind of bare bones. When you leave the city, the wild is definitely where this game shines, where there's just Pokemon all over, and you're free to like climb the walls and fly around, and you just have like the ability to explore all of this open world, especially when you get all the sandwiches. It gives you like total freedom to go wherever you want. And it seems like there's always like, you know, a group of Pokemon like up in the mountains or in the ocean. You're always going to find Pokemon. I do wish that the Pokemon were slightly larger. Some of them are really teeny tiny and hard to see, and you will accidentally run into them initiating a battle. Especially like the bug Pokemon. It would help too if they were bigger, because then I could see if they were shiny or not. And while it is nice that you can see if they're shiny in the overworld, during this playthrough, I didn't see any shiny Pokemon aside from the ones that I transferred from Pokemon Home. And I don't know if that's because I didn't notice them when I came across them, because a lot of them are so teeny tiny, but I wish that there was some kind of maybe like visual clue, like a little sparkle or something, and I could say, oh, there's a shiny Diglett, and then I can go catch it, rather than just really having to start shiny hunting. And I don't think shiny hunting is quite as exciting as finding a shiny in the wild. During my first playthrough of this game, I did find like a shiny Mareep, and there was one other one, but yeah, unfortunately this time I didn't stumble across any in the wild. You can do raids out in the wild as well. Raids are basically like you team up with 3 other people and you take turns like fighting against this giant terrestrialized Pokemon, and this is a good way to get a terrestrialized Pokemon with a different typing than what it would normally have. Now, I'd never got much into the late game with this playthrough, and so whenever I tried to raid with other real players, I could never find a group, and I can definitely see why, because if you don't find 3 other people to do a raid with, real people that is, then it will just give you 3 NPCs. And I never had any problem taking down these raid Pokemon with NPCs. Now, once I get to like the hardcore 5-star Mewtwo raids, then you probably would need some real players to take them down rather than the given NPCs. But in terms of like most of the normal gameplay, you probably are good to just go with the computers. Now, the performance of this game definitely leaves something to be desired. If I was to compare this game to Pokemon Legends Arceus, I'd say Legends Arceus runs way better than this one. Basically, very choppy visuals, very laggy, takes a while whenever you go into a building. Having played this game right after playing through Scarlet Nexus, I can definitely see why a lot of people weren't happy with the performance of this game, and I have no excuse for it, and the Pokemon Company definitely doesn't have any excuse for it, because this is like the biggest gaming franchise in the world. Certainly they could make a game that actually runs on the Switch. I mean, other games have done it. Legend of Zelda, Xenoblade Chronicles. There's not really any excuse why the Pokemon Company wasn't able to pull off something really polished, but I mean, I guess it just is what it is. It's just so funny to see like Pokemon flying in the distance and they're moving at like 3 frames a second. It is kind of silly, but if that's what they needed to do to make the game run, then I guess it's better than nothing. Sometimes you'll like look even like at a hill or a mountain, and it's like the textures on that hill or mountain move up and down without you like moving the camera or anything. It's weird, just weird like little visual glitches like that. Overall, I still think that the best Switch game is Pokemon Legends Arceus, but I did have a lot of fun playing through this game. Even the second time around, I enjoyed what I played, and I just like the idea of playing Pokemon. I like the idea of catching and building up your own team, and I'm obviously very invested in the franchise as a whole with Pokemon Home and Go and the ability to transfer all these Pokemon. So like, I am their prime demographic. I can complain all I want, but I'm still gonna buy the game and play it. Overall, I think I will give this game a 4 out of 5. I wish that it was a lot more polished, and that would easily bring this game up to a 5 out of 5, but I can't overlook these glitches and the slow pacing of it all. Well guys, that's it for me. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about Pokemon Violet, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye!